Hey there, Christy with Automation on a Mission, and I am excited to bring you another week's Business Booster training. In this week's training, we're going to talk about communication and best practices as it relates to your sales and marketing efforts. And specifically, what we're talking about is how do you think about and what does it actually mean to stay top of mind with your ideal buyer? How do you deliver value? And ultimately, how do you know when it's time to say goodbye to somebody on your list? So let's dive in. All right, so first thing I want to do is I'm going to talk about exactly what does it mean to be top of mind. And if you really are not clear exactly what that concept is, I want you to picture the idea of your ideal client being at that place where they're like, that's it, I'm done, I can't handle this thing any longer. I'm going to call and fill in the blank with your name because they're going to help me solve the problem. That's what it means to be top of mind. When your ideal client has a particular need, which by the way, you happen to solve, or a particular problem which you happen to fix, then you're the first person they think of. And the way that we do that is by making sure that we are staying top of mind. So what does it mean to be top of mind? It means that when you are producing regularly meaningful and engaging content that your ideal client is interested in and engaged with, that you are reinforcing their understanding of who you are and what you do, so that when it comes time for them to go and seek that solution, you are the person that they think of. I know just the person, that's you. Okay. And the way we stay top of mind is by making sure that we're delivering lots of amazing and valuable content. So why does it matter? So in this day and age, what I want you to be thinking about is where were you when you signed on for Automation on a Mission, and how many other products maybe that you considered, how many other products have been introduced to you since that time from a technology standpoint. And what that means is every day with new technology coming out, there's more and more competition, and really like all of this stuff, the goal is to make it easier. The goal is to make it easier for you and your competition to do more with less, to do more with technology to make all of those things possible. So staying top of mind means taking advantage of the technology that you have to play the long game. And the goal is that one, your content is better and more interesting and engaging than your competition, and two, that you last longer than your competition. Okay, you want to make sure that your content is meaningful, it's memorable, and it engages them, and that you still stand out even in spite of all those things. It is staying top of mind with your agenda to the side and focusing on what's in their best interest and the way they want to make decisions. And the reason why I bring that up is because I say this time and time again, and I see it still play out with many of our members where they don't devote the time and the resources to stay top of mind, because in their mind they're still thinking that so-and-so didn't buy from me and therefore they're not interested. But the lack of activity or the lack of action is not a no. So the reality though is what's happening is they're moving on their timeline, not yours. And so staying top of mind means continuing to deliver value above and beyond your own personal agenda, delivering to their agenda, so that when they are ready to take action, you're there, you're ready, you're waiting, and you're available for them to say yes to. Okay? So with that in mind, I'm going to guess that in all likelihood, when you started this training, you probably thought of email marketing as what we talk about when we say staying top of mind. But the reality is you can stay top of mind with your ideal clients in a whole different variety of different ways. And what I like to think about is touches. And a touch can be that one piece of communication, but it can come from any number of channels. And this is not an exclusive list. You could break this down even into more granular details if that's something that you want to do. I just sort of lump things together to try to keep it sort of simple for the purpose of this training. But the first thing that comes to mind with most people when they're talking to me, especially, is email marketing, because so much of automation is used to deliver emails so that we're not having to sit down and write them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that we can continue to play that long game. And so let's talk a little bit about email marketing as a form of how to stay top of mind. And what I mean by that is your email content could be things like newsletters. It could be promotional emails. It can be your long-term nurture. So when we talk about personalized follow-up, what we're talking about is long-term nurture emails. It's those emails that continue to deliver value. Maybe they're telling stories, maybe they're sharing testimonials, maybe they are overcoming objections that haven't been spoken yet as a way of continuing to sell without selling in your value-added content. So email marketing can be a whole bunches of different kinds of things. It can also be your promotional content where you're selling your products, services, et cetera, et cetera. So the cool thing about email marketing is it does allow for consistent engagement that you can create once and then share with the masses over time, and use automation to make it so that you don't ever have to worry about it, with the exception of checking for metrics and things like that, which we will be talking about. And the goal is to build that know, like, and trust and nurture those relationships however long it takes. Also, we have social media, and that can include both organic and paid content creation. This counts as touches. This counts as staying top of mind. If your people are really good at engaging with you on social media and you're really good at creating content that works for them, this is still a good channel to reach to your audience, and it counts in that building know, like, and trust. Now, here's the key to social media that we always mention this because it's important to not consider this as the be all end all and the only place that you do your top of mind efforts, and that is that you don't own this list. So if something happens in the middle of the night, somebody hacks your account and steals your login and you can't log in, or Instagram, for example, has just decided that today your content is no and is forbidden and they ban your account. And that ban could be temporary, it could be long-term. Maybe you've had ongoing issues with social media, but if all of your lists, if all of your engagement is built into this one bucket, it's a very risky strategy because you can't take it with you. You can't take it somewhere else. And while there are a few tools out there that will scrape like a private Facebook group or a LinkedIn page, et cetera, that doesn't make it ethically okay. So I do want to sort of put that disclaimer out there. The reason why we always say this is good, but this is better is because this is the list that you own. This is the list that that maybe you can provide value to and have your touches, but you have a lot of things that are out of your control that also have a higher level of risk. Direct mail is one of those unsung heroes. We personally love direct mail. We don't do a whole lot of it. But there's the cool thing about direct mail in 2024 is that nobody's doing it. So you send a piece of mail to someone and you're going to be memorable. So one of the things that we've done in the past that was very effective was we did a rubber ducky campaign. So we were specifically targeting hot tub and swim spa dealers. And I sent them a rubber ducky. It wasn't branded. It didn't have a note. I just sent them a ducky. And I knew, based on where it was going, approximately how long it would take to arrive. And then that rubber ducky was my foot in the door to a conversation. Hey, did you get a rubber ducky in the mail? That was from me. Oh my God, why did you send that? Like, talk about something memorable. That was a pretty impactful thing. So I'm not saying that you need to go that sort of route. I'm just saying that direct mail counts as a touch, and it's another way to stay top of mind. Something that a real estate agent that I worked with for a long time did was she sent out postcards with the sports seasons. So, here in Denver, the Rockies, however good or bad they are, depending on the season, I guess same thing is true with the Broncos. People are diehard fans. And so one of the things that she did to deliver value was she would send a postcard to her clients and past clients, just as a way of staying top of mind. Now, I bought a house with her, so I'm not in the market for another house, but you know what? I'm telling her story right now. And if somebody says that they're going to start looking for a house, guess who who's coming to my mind? So even though we've already done our business and there's probably not going to be a need for a hot minute, I can refer business to her. So she doesn't consider me a one and done sort of thing. And direct mail was a very effective strategy for her to stay top of mind. SMS and text messages are a really great way to reach your people. And this can be, announcements, urgent updates. It could be reminders for things like upcoming meetings. Like maybe you're having a demo or a sales conversation or a free strategy call. You want them to show up. This counts. It's also a really good thing. So if you have some sort of limited time offer that you're promoting via email and other forms, using SMS marketing is really effective, not only because it's a different way of touching, but also because I want you to look around right now and find your phone. And how many inches, I didn't say feet, I said inches. How many inches away from you is your phone right now? I'm gonna guess it's less than a foot. And with that being said, it's upwards of 85% of those text messages that you send out are going to be opened and received and opened in under 5 minutes of that delivery. So the distinction between email and text messaging is that immediate response, like you can say with pretty good certainty that your people are going, and my apologies, that your people are going to get quickly. So if you're trying to send something out that's time sensitive, for example, this is a really great strategy. If you want to make sure that people know, this is a really great strategy. The other thing to point out with both of these two and also paid is now we start talking about higher ticket items. So certainly when you are thinking about what is your different strategies for staying top of mind, keeping your budget in check is certainly something to consider as well. Being sure that you're not putting yourself in a position where you go bankrupt trying to generate business while staying top of mind and not using the most effective strategies. So certainly something to be considerate of. And then the same thing with phone. You know, it's not every day that people, answer the phone, but it is also still an effective way of reaching your people. So last year we did a bundle with a group of people, and our list size doubled in size in about 5 days. And one of the things that we really worked to try to do when our list grew was smile and dial. And all that was, hey, my name is Christy. I'm calling from Automation on a Mission. I know you signed up for my buyer journey. I just wanted to say thanks so much. And also, if you have any questions or I can be of support, let me know. If they answer the phone, essentially the same thing. Tell me what inspired you to, to sign up for this thing. That curiosity was really shocking to people. And also what a great way to build rapport. Holy cow, you are not just a number in my world, you are a human being. And they felt that. So that's something that you can absolutely consider as well. And we love to call that the smiling and dialing. And then the next piece is content marketing. So we're a huge fan of blogging and have been blogging for several years. But that's not the be all end all. Some people will launch podcasts, some people use vlogs or create a lot of video content. Any of those things can be valuable. And the cool thing about creating content that you push out there is you can push them out there through all these different channels. So you create your content, you host it in YouTube, you host it on your social media page, you push it out on email, you put it on your website, and now you're creating this like full circle of how you're delivering value, you're showing the legitimacy of the work that you do, and people get a sample of exactly how amazing and talented you really are. So tons of different ways to stay top of mind. And the reason I wanted to spend so much time on this is because I don't want you thinking about the fact that, oh my God, it's so hard to create content and it's so hard to, be original and be creative and not say I'm just following up 30 different times. What we're trying to say is that if you have a comprehensive strategy, then you are staying top of mind as long as you are, reaching people with some degree of consistency. And that's the key. So the thing that I want you to be thinking about when it comes to how you stay top of mind is to build systems and processes that you can live with. So I say this to our one-on-one clients all the time where they're like, oh my God, I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to deliver a podcast 3 times a week and it's going to be amazing. And I'm also going to have guest speakers and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And then, 2 weeks in, they're absolutely bogged down by this promise that they've made to themselves and unfortunately their list as well that they can't keep up with. So start small and start with something that you can do with consistency and do the best you can. So rather than do a whole bunch of things really poorly or make a bunch of promises that you can't keep, what is 1 or 2 things on this list that you think you can do really well and then focus on those? So here's another example from our world. We've been blogging for years. And for the last 2 years, one of my business goals has been to deliver value-added content more than once a week. And I wasn't really specific or, in terms of like, this is what it needed to look like, et cetera, et cetera. But this year we launched a newsletter and it goes out twice a month. Could I have launched it once a week? Absolutely. And also, I have a lot of different things that go in that newsletter, and it takes quite a bit of time to make sure that the newsletter goes out with all of the right material. And with that being said, I don't want the newsletter to go out that does like with garbage in it. And I don't want to create so many newsletters that I don't have time to generate the content for the different sections. So for now, I would rather do 2 a month and know I can live up to that. And once we've got the momentum and the systems and the consistency, then maybe we ramp up and we add additional newsletters. But for the time being, we're going to start with every other week, and we're just going to keep it going and see how things go. And maybe it evolves, maybe it changes, maybe it doesn't. Maybe we keep it at twice a month because that's all our readership really needs, or that's all we have the physical bandwidth for. Again, I want really great newsletters and not a bunch of fluff that doesn't mean anything that no one reads. So that's how we make that decision. We continue to struggle here at Automation on a Mission with finding the right approach to social media that is effective in terms of balancing our time and also delivering value to our followers and our readers and subscribers. It's still a work in progress. And to that point, the things that you really need to be thinking about when it comes to the content that you put out is just because you put it out doesn't guarantee that it's going to work. And it may take some time tweaking and adjusting both what you put out in different channels and what channels you actually target on. So as an example, I mentioned that we struggle with social media, and every time I bring on somebody to help me with it, they go straight to Instagram. And I can tell you the number of people who watch our Instagram posts is an audience of 1. And it's me. So I don't see that as a good use of our time. And it's taken me a long time to get to a point now where I will tell the experts not to spend any of their time and energy here because it's not where my people hang out. And that's been consistently demonstrated over and over again. So rather than focusing on Instagram, I'm going to focus on the social channels that do work for our audience as best as we can for the moment and hope that we build from there. So that's just sort of an example of consistency. Do it and do it well, and make sure that you know what's most effective for your audience. And with that being said, I think it's also worth mentioning, and we've done so many trainings specifically on this topic, knowing who your ideal client is should be a no-brainer piece that goes before all of this. So if you want trainings on ideal client, we've done plenty of trainings in the past specifically about how to identify your ideal client. So feel free to go back and look at those. But everything that we're talking about today is specifically targeting your ideal client. And if you've not gone and done the exercise to know who your ideal client is, it is imperative, because none of this will work if you're not talking to that specific person. So with that in mind, I want you to be thinking next about exactly what is valuable content. So what can you be putting out so that you're not dealing with that whole flashy cursor on the Word document going, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be saying right now. I want to give you a couple of ideas about how you might be able to put your content into these buckets. And you might find also that these buckets have a little bit of overlap. And that's totally fine. I'm not telling you that if it doesn't fit in here, you can't use it. I'm not telling you that something that you share as a personal story may not also be inspiring and they may not learn something as well. So you can see where there might be, an interconnectivity to all of these things. But here's what we mean when we talk about educational content. So you can have educational content that comes out in a blog where you're teaching things like who's your ideal client or how to overcome imposter syndrome. Maybe your educational content is a checklist, or maybe you're sharing a case study of a client that you worked with and exactly how you made a difference. So not only are you sharing educational things that help somebody understand how you produce results, but you're also sharing someone's story, and that can be really inspiring. Promotional content. Now, it's interesting. I don't think that we typically need to talk a ton about this, because a lot of times what happens is people go from some sort of like introduction, hi, my name is Christy, to buy my stuff. But the reality is, if we are providing tons of valuable content over time, there's nothing wrong with sending promotional content. Promotional content by itself is going to get people to tune out of your list pretty quickly. So when we talk about promotional content, this means this is where you sell your products and services. It could be the first introduction to your core offer. It could be ongoing emails inviting people to make a purchase. It could be that your offer is condensed with a case study or with a personal story, any of those things. But it's really how you sell your products and services. So we do all of this ultimately with the goal of getting people to buy our stuff. And so the key is knowing when the right time to sell is, and making sure that the messaging is speaking to that specific person. And then finally, making sure that all of our content is not exclusively promotional content. So the other things, special offers, limited time offers, announcements of new products, all of those things fit into that promotional content. Testimonials I put under here, but testimonials can also be inspiring. They can also be educational. So again, put them into whatever bucket you want. Inspirational content. I love telling stories, and I think stories is a really effective way of selling who you are. I don't necessarily just mean your promotional content. I think selling you. So when you are able to inspire your audience by sharing success stories or something that motivated you, that is going to help other people see exactly who you are. You're a real life human being. They want to be with you. They want to work with you because holy cow, look at this person who's a leader in their industry. One of my favorite things that we added in our newsletter this year was, so one of the things that, or one section is things we're loving or stuff we're loving, something along those lines. And when I first put the framework together for the newsletter, I was really thinking about sharing books that I was reading because I love reading, business development, professional books in the morning, and sometimes some woo-y things about my own personal growth. But it was like the second newsletter that we put out. I was walking as I was creating my stuff on my treadmill, and I thought, holy cow, what a cool way to share this treadmill with people, and also how effective it is in my my business strategy. So number one, it helps me pay attention because I'm not good at that. Number two, it helps me not sit in my chair all day long, which then makes me sore and in pain at the end of the day. And so did I share an affiliate link? Absolutely not. Could I have? Yep. And it would have been totally fine. And I even put in parentheses, not an affiliate link, but if you want to see where I got this from, here it is. And the reason I did that was because when I started walking on the treadmill, so many people around me had commented and also went and bought their own treadmill. So my story was inspiring to other people. They took action and bought themselves a desk treadmill so that they were doing the same thing. And my hope is that other people also don't have back pain because they were able to get some extra steps in. So check that out, how a personal story of something that I incorporated into my newsletter was also something that I could use to inspire and motivate others, and also show the human side of who I am and what I do. So if you're in that position where you're like, I don't know what to say, these are really great starting points for you to be thinking about how you can continue to provide value over time. And it doesn't have to be email only. You can be creating educational content that you share on social media or in other pieces of content, et cetera, et cetera. You can also be doing it in email, but your communication strategy does have to include things like this in order for you to be able to build that trust, build that rapport, and make sure that they don't forget who you are. So things that I want you to think about when it comes to how you're building that communication strategy is, and I've kind of hinted at this when I talked about the develop systems and processes that you can live up to or that you can thrive in. And one of those things is frequency. So again, that frequency is not only for your benefit, but for the benefit of your ideal client as well. Your ideal client needs to be able to expect certain things from you. So one of the things that we include in one of our email templates is a welcome email that says, this is who I am, this is what I do, and this is what you can expect from me moving forward. And so that frequency is certainly important for you to be considering when it comes time for you to tell your readers exactly what to expect, whether that's in Facebook or in Instagram or in your email marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And exactly what that frequency is really up to you to figure out for your list. There's no like rhyme or reason that says you have to email people 3 times a day, and it has to be at such and such time, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what I will say is, and this is something that I think comes up a lot with people that we work with, is that when you figure out what that frequency is, it is not your agenda, it's the agenda of your readers. And so some of this is going to be experimenting. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of times, like we think, oh my God, I don't want to, email my client, my ideal client every day, or my prospects every single day. That feels like a real burden. But if you are in a high turnover industry and you're not in their inbox when they're ready to take an action, but somebody else is, won't that feel a bit like a bummer? So you find the balance. And the other side of that experimenting is looking and tracking engagement from a perspective of on average, how many people are opening. Now, that is not the be all end all metric, and we talk about that quite a bit. Most importantly in that is, what are they clicking on and how often are they clicking? What is the rate at which people start to disengage and unsubscribe? And we're going to talk a little bit about that here in just a minute as well. And paying attention to those numbers. So 10 years ago, we used to talk about automation as the set it and forget it solution. But the reality is, if you set it and forget it and you never look at your metrics, you have no idea if it's effective, or if making a couple of small tweaks is going to be the thing that makes a difference in terms of whether or not somebody stays on your list and buys versus eventually just unsubscribing and disengaging from your stuff. So I say all this to say it does require an element of experimentation, knowing who your ideal client is, making sure that your content is being delivered to those people, and then seeing exactly how do they react. If you're emailing them every single day, for example, are they clicking the unsubscribe link, at a certain point? And then at that certain point, is it about frequency, or is it about like a specific subject line? Maybe it's like triggering something along those lines. And we'll talk about that here in just a second with A/B testing, but paying attention to the patterns, knowing what those things are will make a huge difference. But the frequency is finding the balance of just enough so that you are staying top of mind, but not so much that you are a nuisance in their inbox and they tune you out. The next thing is about timing. And the fun thing about timing is that it's different for every industry, and it also changes. And so what I mean by that is, when do you post your content? So if I use social media as an example, we used Metricool for, I think, a year as a social media scheduler. And part of the reason why I really liked it was it gave me not only the ability to create and schedule my content across multiple channels at the same time, but it also told me the best time of day based on my followers. So my followers were online ironically, they were on social media, on Facebook especially, most often around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't exactly know what that means, but at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if I was posting, that was the greatest opportunity for me to get my content in front of their eyeballs. So knowing the day or the time that you schedule an email or you schedule a post or something like that could be the difference between whether or not they see it or not. Maybe you are in a business that serves other businesses, and so sending emails, for example, on the weekends is not a good idea because they're not going to see it, and it's just going to get lost in the sea of emails that come in over the weekend. Maybe your business is specifically serving people that are only going to be using your services on their free time. So perhaps you send your emails early in the morning or late at night or only on the weekends, things like that. So if you are trying to figure out best engagement times, experimenting is going to be one thing. You can also Google those things or use ChatGPT to explore and investigate what are the best practices for your particular sector. So one example was, sometime last year, we found that Tuesday mornings is the best day of the week to deliver blog announcements. So that's when we send our blogs. But it doesn't mean that it's the only time. It also doesn't mean that if I don't get one out on Tuesday and it happens to go out on Wednesday because something happened on our end, that's okay. So those are just some examples of things that you might consider when it comes to timing. And again, if you experiment, you'll get firsthand experience of how your list responds. So even if you find out that your industry, your vertical is going to do best under these circumstances, you may find a mismatch with your specific list. And then you've got to figure out, is your list a match to the industry best practices, or simply, do they just like to, march to the beat of their own drum? And then the last thing that I would say about all of this is to do some A/B testing. Now, we just did a training specifically on that topic. So if you're looking to understand exactly what we mean by that, what it is small, tiny, subtle adjustments that you're making to your marketing efforts to see what is the most effective approach. It could be things like A/B testing time. It could be things like A/B testing a subject line or a graphic in a social media post to see what is going to get you the most clicks or the most signups, et cetera, et cetera. But A/B testing is going to help you learn exactly what your audience likes and what their preferences are. And then you build all of your future strategy specifically around what you've learned. This is not effective if you're not willing to take the time to follow up and learn and actually get findings from it that you can then take action on in the future. And then my last piece about A/B testing that we talked about last week's training is that just because you've done it once doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it again. So if you did an A/B test over the series of a couple of days to figure out, what's the best time of day to send emails, for example, or to schedule a social media post, and then you're like, all right, so now I know, that doesn't mean that 6 months from now, a year from now, that data is exactly the same. So it's certainly worth experimenting. It doesn't mean that you are a bad business owner if you don't do it. It's just a way of accentuating or improving on your strategy by building this into your approach that says, I'm going to look at all of the different factors and how I can use this so that I'm the most effective at good communication, good content to the right people at the right time with the right frequency, because I know exactly what they want, what they need, they're telling me, and then I'm using that accordingly. All right, so here's the last part of our training, and it's the part that's probably the least fun, but it's also possibly the most important part. And this is what happens when you've got this list of people and they are not doing what you want them to do, which is ultimately buy from you. So the things that I want to say about this is that none of the timing is hard and fast. But I want you to be conscientious of all of the different things that we're talking about as it relates to those different touch points. So social media, paid advertising, email marketing, text message marketing, so on and so forth. So the first thing to think about is consent. So before you start doing any kind of marketing, the people that you are reaching out to should have consented to that marketing. You will be more effective in the long run. Email and text message marketing is against the law to do without them consenting to receiving your content. Direct mail and phone are actually not the case. And so certainly you can buy lists and take your chances. But again, that's going to be a numbers game where you buy a lot more than what you get back in return. Some businesses, that's a really effective strategy. Other businesses, maybe not so much. So you have to consider whether or not that's something that's worth your time and your money. So things that you want to pay attention to is assessing that engagement level. And what I mean when I talk about that is how long have they been on your social media group? How long have they been on your email list? How long since the last time they clicked on something? Those are the kinds of things that you want to pay attention to. Now, I don't actually have hard and fast rules for text message marketing, especially because it's really hard to actually track, like clicking on a link might be one thing, but also when was the last time you clicked on a link from a phone number you don't have in your phone book kind of thing. So, but when it comes to email marketing, the length of time someone stays on your list, the average shelf life is about 90 days. And different email marketing platforms will have different rules, but for the most part, they are across the board going to tell you that you have to stay underneath a certain percentage of number of people who unsubscribe, a certain percentage of number of people whose emails are no longer deliverable or who are bouncing. And then others will also go so far as to track your email list engagement, as in they're not opening, they're not clicking, and therefore they're not considered engaged and should not be considered a marketable contact. So if you have only very high ticket offers that are, you know, something that's going to take somebody a bit of time to be thoughtful and consider, or maybe your offers require multiple people to make the decision and therefore your sales process is longer. Maybe 90 days isn't long enough for you. Maybe it needs to be a little bit longer. But at some point you want to know and make a decision as to what is that threshold that you say, okay, from this point forward, I need to start taking action on the people who are not engaging. So as an example, in our business, 90 days is the trigger mark. So if you've been in my list for 90 days and you've not done anything, then you're going to go into a re-engagement campaign. You're going to get messaging from me that basically is going to take you to the next level. And that's going to move us to a place where we're going to discuss, essentially, I mean, it may be a one-sided conversation, but we're going to discuss what happens next. And that re-engagement is really designed to protect their best interests and mine as well. And what I mean by that is a re-engagement campaign is once they've crossed that threshold, I put them into a new workflow, and that workflow basically says, was it you? Was it me or was it you? Like, I mean, did I do something? Did I hurt your feeling? You know, and you know, we've tried to make it sort of fun and silly kind of thing, but really what we're trying to do is say, you're not opening our emails, you're not engaging with our content, and if you're no longer interested, I'm going to gracefully give you the boot. You are always welcome to join my community again, but if you're not interested in receiving my content, I'm going to take you off the list. And the reason why this is super important is because at a certain point, when you start emailing or when you continue emailing unresponsive contacts, what you're doing is sending a message to all of the receiving servers that you don't care about whether or not your content is being read or not. And if you want to know how an email goes from your inbox to your promotions to your spam, that's how. So, and I'm saying that to you as a consumer, not so much as a marketer. You'll notice that that person who you signed up for their list, eventually they find themselves in the promotions folder, and eventually they find themselves in the spam folder. And the way they get there is they're not attending to their list, or they're sending out content that specifically is sort of spammy or promotional in nature, to the extent that the receiving server knows it, sees it, and recognizes it, and therefore they're not going to put it in the inbox. So you want your emails to go in the inbox. And if that's the case, then we want to make sure that we're only sending to people who want to receive our content. So a re-engagement campaign's purpose is to say, do you want to stay on my list? And this can go any number of ways. But for the sake of time and brevity and to keep things super simple, it can be a super simple couple email, maybe a text message campaign. But I would say, you know, specifically for the context of what we're talking about, this is going to be mostly email, but it's specifically saying, I just want to gauge your interest. And if you want to stay on the list, here's a free offer. If you're somebody that can sell a discount to a service, maybe that's the way you get them re-engaged. So for example, we have several clients that do personal laundry. So they do, you know, in-home pickup, do your laundry, bring it back and drop it off. So a good re-engagement strategy for them is, you know, hey, we miss you. In order to get you back, let's give you $5 off your next order. Here's a coupon code. And then what they click that link to get the coupon code. And now all of a sudden, because they click that link, they're engaged. And that says, check, okay, you're back into the engagement group, all's good to go, we're going to continue on. But the person who doesn't engage, maybe they get another email or two, that sort of thing. Sometimes people will be as simple as, if you want to stay on the list, click here. If you don't want to stay on the list, click here, and we're just going to remove you. And it's a way of getting people to unsubscribe without hitting the unsubscribe button. And you can then tag them and decide what you want to do with those people who don't want to receive your marketing content anymore. So I talked a little bit about that cutoff point. That's what we were talking about when I started up here, about that 90-day shelf life. You need to know what the buyer journey looks like for your audience and what's the typical point that people start to fall off your content. Now, if you've never developed and consistently delivered content over time, this is a difficult number to gauge. So step one in this strategy is going to be to start to develop content over time and develop that consistency. And then step two is to start and track and monitor the effectiveness of your content and when people start to disengage. And the thing I want you to think about, and we talk a little bit about it over here, is it's not personal. It's not them saying they don't like you, they don't like your business, et cetera, et cetera. It's just that their interests may be elsewhere, and that interest being elsewhere might just be a timing thing. I think about all of my clients and my friends who are moms and whose kids are home from school right now, and who I haven't heard from all summer long because they are the cruise director who's trying to manage those camp schedules and the this schedule and the that schedule, and also keep themselves and their lives and their careers all on track. And in that case, maybe my emails are not their most important priority right now, but maybe they come back. So those are the kinds of things that you might want to consider and pay attention to, but you have to have a starting point to say, okay, this is where I'm going to pay attention. These are the things that matter. These are the numbers I'm paying attention to. And that comes after you start developing and delivering consistent content. So how do you know when it's time to stop? So number one, no response from that re-engagement. If they haven't responded to multiple attempts, so sending one re-engagement email, probably not going to fly. But if you do multiple ones of those and you don't get any response, that's a pretty good indication that they've probably moved on, that their interests are elsewhere. And again, they can always come back and re-engage with you in the future. It doesn't mean that they can never rejoin your list. Low engagement metrics, consistently low open rates, consistently low click-through rates, interaction on your content are strong indicators that it's time to clean house. So that cleaning house could be any number of things, but what it's telling you is that the people that are in your list are not people that are more than likely going to buy from you anytime soon. And that takes us to list hygiene. And that means regularly cleaning out your list of anybody who doesn't meet that engaged criteria. You get to create the rules about what that criteria looks like initially, but when someone unsubscribes, you cannot just add them back in. If their email is bouncing, you can't just redo that. So if, for example, you are sending, let's say, for example, you decide that you're going to start sending emails from a new dedicated domain and you didn't set it up in the system, the likelihood is that that email is going to bounce and you risk damaging your list. You can't send to those people. So make sure that you do all the right steps in terms of making sure that you're maintaining clean lists and that you're removing people that are not interested in receiving your content. So when it comes to removing, what I want you to be thinking about is exactly what does that look like? So for some systems, you might have an archive versus a delete, and the archive means it stores it somewhere, but it's not visible and you can't see it. I know MailChimp has an archive feature versus a delete. Delete means you're pulling it out of the system altogether. Now, automation on a mission, we don't have an archive. Doesn't mean that you can't make your own. But what I don't like about that approach for myself personally, and this is a personal decision, is I don't want the risk of accidentally emailing someone that shouldn't be receiving that email. And what I mean by that is not the unsubscribe or the bounce, but the person who just never responded at all, and I've decided is no longer considered marketable. Their email is still technically deliverable, and my continued efforts to email them is only going to do damage to my sender reputation because they're not opening my emails. And if I want to make sure that my emails are going into your inbox and not your spam folder, I need to not send that person email. So for me personally, my approach, my preference is to remove them from the system. Now, I don't actually need to keep lists of contacts that I can't market to. So if you've never bought from me and you are not engaged with my content, I delete your contact record. And then if you decide later on that you see an irresistible offer you can't live without, you're going to be treated like royalty when you sign up for that because you're going to be treated like a brand new contact. Other people would prefer to keep and hold on to that data. Totally fine, nothing wrong with that. If you're in automation on a mission and you are doing your list hygiene, maybe you export that list that's no longer marketable, you store it on a Google Sheet, put it in a Google Drive, and then take it out of your system. That way you're not risking sending that email marketing content to someone else. So that's one thing that you can certainly do. Paying attention to your trends, making sure you understand exactly what what's working and what's not. An example of that would be, we have a client who last week had a specific email that she was sending out to her co-ed list promoting a women's event. And I told her, I don't recommend this. This is a bad idea because you've not segmented your audience by gender and you're specifically promoting a women's only event. If you change the marketing message to say, hey dudes, if you're a dude reading this, forward this to one of your lady friends, that might have been a little bit more effective. But talking to an audience of men and women and not attending to the fact that you are talking to men is tone deaf. And she had excessively high spam complaints as a result of that. And unfortunately, because of that, now she's lost a decent portion of her mailing list. Because, you know, those people unsubscribed because the email was very off-putting to those recipients. So being able to segment your communications, and proactively using those lists so that you're only sending email or content that's of interest to your people. The same thing is true for text message, by the way. The other thing is, like, what's worse is if they don't unsubscribe and they just start ignoring your emails, because then, you know, they're doing bigger damage across the board when they do that. The last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to dealing with unengaged and disengaged contacts is letting go. One of the nice things I think about a lot of our newer clients is they don't care about the size of their list, and that's a good thing. So I would rather have 100 super motivated, excited, engaged buyers than 1,000 people on my list that don't care about anything I have to say. So when you let go of people who are not interested in receiving your content, you're not only freeing up space, like emotionally and mentally for yourself, but also making sure that you're being respectful of their wishes. Even if they don't say they don't want to receive your content anymore, the fact that they're not taking any action at all is telling you something. They are sending you a message. So it's okay to remove them. It's okay to archive them. It's okay to delete them. And then the last thing that I'll say about all of this, in terms of like how you clean up your people is, and there's again, no right or wrong way about this, and every business is different. My personal strategy, and I do recommend this to most of our clients, is I will keep you in the system if you've ever bought anything, versus the people who've never bought. And the reason being, if you disengage as a past customer or a lapsed customer, I want to know that you were a lapsed customer. Even if I stop marketing to you, I still want to know what that relationship history looked like. Whereas the person who's never bought, I would rather treat you like royalty when you come back. Because to me, that makes a whole lot more sense than, you know, this person who was like a diehard fan for years and years, and they put their business on hold for 2 years and went and got a job and took a break and then came back to it engaged, you know, revitalized and ready to rock and roll. Like, I don't like that, feels also sort of like a lost opportunity. So what you do in terms of who stays and who goes is totally up to you. But my personal strategy is, if you've ever bought from me, if you've ever been a customer in the past, even as I'm cleaning out all the other disengaged, I'll keep you and just mark you as somebody that I don't market to. In our system, in Automation on a Mission, you can just check the boxes for do not disturb, so it will skip them if they accidentally do get a piece of content, or get attempted a piece of content. And that's a DND that you can always turn off because you did it yourself. So that's something that you can certainly do as well. And then the last thing that I want you to be thinking about is exactly how you measure success. Exactly what is it that you know to be effective. And what I want you to be thinking about is that you're focusing on what those metrics are. So if you don't have anything, just start by looking and watching and using those as your initial benchmarks. And then you're going to move from there. But the goal is that at any given time, you're constantly measuring your success. It doesn't mean that every single email that goes out, you have to look at your rate, at your open rates and click-through rates, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe once a week, you go and you look and see how things are going. You check and see how many people have unsubscribed, who's on your do not disturb list, what do I need to do with them, and that sort of thing. And then adjusting your strategy based on exactly what it is that you're learning. The more adjusting that you do, the better you'll be at making sure that your content is right on point and on the money, specifically for what they're looking for and what they need. So if you have any questions, you need any help or support, as always, don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to support you. And thank you so much. Have a good one.